Yeah, so we already did this, and I was listening to these guys talk, and you guys are where I was a year and a half ago, and it's pretty awful. It's gonna, the next year of your life, if they implement this thing, is gonna stink. You should all consider truck driving school or something. At any rate, this is about us. We're a property and casualty carrier, but we're a crop insurer. We write mostly federal multi-peril crop insurance, which is a federally guaranteed and reinsured program. We write almost $1 billion of it as of next week. The thing about crop insurance is, since it's the FCIC, since it's all federally guaranteed and reinsured, there's a specific exemption for that, and we're not required to implement a lot of the things that we're talking about today, unless your regulator specifically asks for it. Our regulator did specifically ask for it, so we have to implement everything. The problem we had is that, I think like a lot of you guys, we write $1 billion in insurance, written premium. We're operated far closer to 100 million, 200 million, maybe 250 million written premium company. We didn't have any of the stuff that Joel described. The stuff that Joel's describing, I think, is all wonderful. It's actually a really good idea, and I agree completely with him that you should have it, you should do it. It's only going to help you. It's not going to, it's only helpful. But if you're sitting at 100 million, 200 million of premium, you probably don't have any of that stuff in place. We didn't have any of that stuff in place. We didn't have it. We didn't know why we needed it. We didn't want to have it. We didn't see the benefit to it until the Indiana Department of Insurance said, yeah, we want you guys to implement ORSA, we want you to implement model audit, we want you to implement corporate governance, angel disclosure, all of it. So, like it says, we write mostly FCIC, that's federal crop insurance, and then a certain amount of private products. We're domiciled in Indiana, and we write now, and actually, yeah, it'll be 39 next year. A little bit more about us. We are a subsidiary entity of a larger grain negotiant. My parent entity is like a Cargill or an ADM or a Bunge. They basically buy and sell grain out of mostly the Midwest United States, but nationwide. We were created we're the insurance arm of the company, but really what we are is more of an advertising. The idea was that the parent company said, how can we better interact with our client base that's selling us grain? Okay, one of the things we can do is sell them crop insurance as well. So we did. What that means to us is that my parent entity, or my boss, effectively, and certainly the people that pick our board, are grain people. They're concerned about everything but specifically statutory accounting or statutory insurance company related issues. This will become why that's important, shows up later. So we're owned by CGB Enterprises. CGB Enterprises have been in turn owned by even larger grain conglomerates, Zeno Grain and Itochu Corporate. Well, Zeno Grain is a Japanese farmers cooperative like Land of Lakes Butter or Florida Natural Orange Juice, but for grain in Japan. Itochu is a Japanese conglomerate that does a little bit of everything. And with respect to us, they're mostly financial services. That's our holding company system, and I am. No, it's not showing. I'm the top right corner for you guys, but the rest of this is everybody else. What all that means is, so I sat through a presentation very much like what Joel said about a year and a half ago. And if you guys are like me, about a year and a half ago, the first 5 minutes of the presentation, I'm thinking, this is great, we should really do this. We should do all of this, this is important, it matters, we should definitely start on it right now. So I go back to my boss after the CPE and have this list of stuff, here's what we should do. And he just stares at me like, why would I want to invest anything in any of this? It's gonna, look, the idea that you don't need to add staff is actually accurate. You won't need to add staff if you implement it correctly, but it will take you a while to realize that you don't need to add staff, because the first thing you're going to do is think we need 4 more people. And if you read the Model Audit Act, or if you read the requirements of the CGAD, my first thought is I'm going to need an implementation manager, and they're probably going to need somebody beneath them to chase all this stuff down. And then so I go to my boss and say, yep, we need all of it. And they say, and he says probably not just no, but good luck and have at it. Like I said, that was us. Well, that's a little old. We grew very quickly. This is why that thing is why the Indiana Department of Insurance wants us to act like a grown-up company. We cede all of our premium. This is what my boss sees, and really what when internally, when they think about us, they think, you don't retain any premium, you don't retain any written premium, you don't retain any earned premium. Just call the Indiana Department and tell them you don't want to do it. And then when he tells you no, explain to him why you don't want to do it and why this isn't important. And I like to think I have a reasonably good relationship with our regulator, and also a good relationship with my boss, I hope. So I called him and said, look, step 1 is that thing. Step 2 is this. I mean, really, we retain probably $200 million of what you guys would consider to be real premium. Like we don't retain. We write about $200 million of what I consider to be real insurance, which is the private product stuff. This stuff is all. It's almost like National Flood. It's insurance. It's premium, but it's both guaranteed by a federal entity and then reinsured partially by the federal entity. And there are exceptions made for it in all this language. It says, if you write less than $500 million of this doesn't apply to you. But that, and then the subsequent, we're going to add a lot more after that. They see that number, and Indiana probably says, no, you're going to do all of this. So, again, what Joel said is step 1 for your implementation has got to be go to the board, go to your boss, go to whoever, and say, this is going to happen, whether you like it or not. I mean, we're going to have to do it. We can either do it kind of pathetic and with somebody working on it a half hour every other week, and then you're going to get to the report and it's going to look terrible. Or we can actually devote some time. We can spool up now. You guys all have it in Pennsylvania. They're saying you have another year. We have a whole year to do it. Start now. Start now. It's my bad joke at the beginning got no laughs whatsoever because all of you are accountants. But it's not going to be that bad. But start now. Start now. Go to whoever it is you go, whether it's the board, it's the CEO, whoever, and say, look, it's a bigger deal than probably you think it is. Let's devote the appropriate resources to it. Let's actually look at it, and then it won't be so bad. So this is more us, which is kind of where. Here you go. Okay, so we started about where you guys are now. We read the model audit language, and just like the guys before me said, when you read the model audit language, I think our response to that was, this is going to be horrible. Because if you read the whole thing and you intend to prepare the report like the language seems to want you to, that's a big company report. That's a big company disclosure. That's a company that has staff. I mean, a regulatory staff that's half a dozen deep to be able to process that It's actually not. You can handle it. It's just, that's going to be your first response if you're like us. And you look at it, and you go through it, and you say, you know, here's where we are right now. This is what we've got. You know, these are our policies, these are our procedures, these are our controls. And you compare it. This is what we've got, this is what they want. So step one should just be review where you're at right now. Go all the way through it, just like the guys in front of me did. Read everything they want from you, and then compare it to what you've got. The best part about it is you're probably already doing both the corporate governance stuff, or at least someone somewhere in your entity is probably already considering the corporate governance stuff. They're probably already considering risk assessment, at least in some capacity. If you're in the insurance industry, I find it hard to believe that no one in your company is just ignoring, hey, we want to expand into this geographic market, or hey, we're thinking about adding this line, and nobody thinks about it. I doubt it. What they probably don't do is document it very well. So that's where, when we got to that point, when we sat down and said, look, are we actually doing any of this? I mean, are we so far away that we're just not going to be able to comply? Is it that bad? And we sat down for a day and talked. No, we are. We're doing all of it. Or we're doing most of it at least. The trick is you're not documenting, or at least we weren't. We didn't document, or we didn't document it. We have a single owner. We're a closely held company. Our board meetings, Joel was saying, you know, you've got too many people on your board. We had 4 people on our board, and that was probably, I mean, yeah, that might have been too many actually. I mean, we really didn't need it for us when we started this. There's nobody on my board that I look at and go, why are you here? It's, I mean, you know, we have the number we have because we had to add a few more, because if we didn't, I would yell at us. So you guys might have other problems. We don't have that. We sat down with the board and said, look, you know, all these things we're doing. I mean, if you actually review the model audit language, and you review what you're doing, we're actually doing all this stuff. What we're not doing well is documenting it at all. And that's when we decided pretty quickly we needed to bring somebody else in. I would consider strongly hiring either a person, or if you don't want to keep them around forever, a consultant to help you with this. We found a reasonable bench of people that knew more about this than we did. We hired a consulting group, they were helpful. The best part about that, hiring a consultant, is that unless you have somebody internally that can do it, is they'll keep you honest. They'll sit down, just like Joel was saying, and say, okay, you're doing this and this and this. Yes, we are. Are you really doing it? Yes, we are. Why are you really doing it? Or why are you doing it? And then you explain why. And that is the best part. This is actually a good idea, and you should do this. Like Joel said, this is good for you, even though you don't think so. And the reason you should do it is because it's going to help you in the long term. You're going to realize why you're doing half the stuff you're doing, or why, if you're not doing it, why you aren't doing it, why you should. So we engaged Markham in our instance to help us, and then they basically did that. They read our board minutes, they went through all the documentation we did have, which was sufficient. It's just that, again, if you're not thinking of it as a large company, you probably never given it sufficient thought. So they read the minutes, they read the articles, the bylaws, everything, and then sat down and said, okay, let's document everything, which is the biggest trick in the hospital. And then made recommendations, and that's the other thing, is that if you already have, if you're a closely held company like we are, we held board meetings when I'd be in the corporate office. We had, hey, I'm coming down for a board meeting next week. We'd sit down for a day and we'd talk. I mean, we got all the things that are effectively required of boards we got done, and we took minutes, such as they were, but they were not well done, they were not good minutes, they were not documented as they should have been. And that's following through on everything. What we had to do is document appropriately, add independent members. We didn't have any independent members. Formalize committees. And then this was the bottom bullet point, is the part that we actually this is why you should engage your board or your CEO or whoever now, is because if you're used to doing things a certain way and you've always done things a certain way, and you know why you're doing them, but you're not real excited about probably the perceived increased transparency by filing these reports. But you're going to have to identify the risk items, you're going to have to document them, and you're going to have to file the report. So you should start that process earlier rather than later in case you get pushback, so that when you finally have to file a thing, you're set. This is the other. This was actually, by the time you get here, this is probably 6 months in. Once you get here, it's all downhill. It's not that bad. I can read this or go through it, but I think it's been covered well already. The trickiest part about the report, so we spent a long time. We pulled up the model, we pulled up the language, we went through it. We got done with it. And if you do it the way you will interpret it, that could be a 100-page report, or more. I mean, you could spend a month just writing a thing. Our initial report, I think, right. And this is why it's a good idea. You should be considering these things, even if and you should be considering them thoroughly. But if you report on them the way that you could potentially report on them, I mean, this could run into an inch thick easily. I think our initial disclosure was, I think, 5 pages. And we went back and forth with our regulator frequently saying, do you have any more guidance about this? Do you want the 100 pages? Do you want 3 pages? Can you give us some intermediate, any kind of guidance at all? And they kept saying, no, we can't, because this was new to them too. So every time we asked, they'd just say, it's free form, do whatever you want. Try to get all the stuff on here, but do whatever you want to do. So we did our best and put everything down, such as it was. They came back and said, I think there. 3 pages? Yeah, it was. We decided less was more, and we went down to 3 pages. So we sent it to them, and they sat on it for a while, and I suppose read it and thought about it, and we were probably one of the first people to have to do it as well. We were one of the first companies to submit. And they got back to us and said, yeah, it's freeform, and you can do it however you want, so long as it looks mostly like this thing that we're about to email you. So they emailed us back this thing that I think you guys have. That was really effectively this. These are what you need to think about. And I don't want to, I've sat through more CP than I want to think about, so I don't want to, you guys can read all this stuff if you have questions to ask.
Can you talk a little about it?
So, get all these things in there. Like they're going to add, we have been asked about, you can't just omit any of them. And the reason I say that is because, for example, my insurance company has no employees. All the employees of all the operations of the insurance company are performed by a managing general agent. So there just are no one gets a paycheck that says CGB Insurance Company on it. So when they talk about compensation, I responded, well, technically we don't have them. I mean, there is no management compensation. But I get the idea that you guys, you're talking to me, and I get the idea you'd probably like to know how much I make and how much the people that perform these functions make, even if they're not technically CGB Insurance Company employees. And they responded, yes, we do want to know how the compensation is developed, even if it's not this insurance company's employee. Even if you're not an employee of the insurance company, the person that performs the function for the insurance company, how is their compensation determined? So do read each section, and I'm happy to answer questions about any of the individual stuff, but I don't want you guys to have to suffer through it if you're not interested. So do read each section and consider each section. But they'll tell you if they want. Feel free to call them. You should call them often, and they'll tell you if they want more or less about an individual section. And that's where, honestly, that's where we spent most of our time, is board suitability. Well, we try to get people that are experienced in. For us, it's crop insurance. There just aren't that many of them. So we had to, we've got people that understand, obviously, P&C insurance, somebody that understands agriculture, hopefully somebody that understands crop insurance, somebody that's, at those, once you get to that point, well, okay, how do you want me to describe that? And you'll spend some period of time. I mean, like Joel was saying, you can say, they're smart and they're competent. They'll probably come, or we got a response. Great, that's nice. How does that apply to you? And then you just go through each one and describe them. The trick I found was figuring out, it's a back and forth. I mean, put down as we put down, again, we went with the less is more approach. We put down as little as we thought we could to still explain it, because otherwise you'll very quickly get into where you can, oversight of senior management and performance. If I explained everything about how the board oversees senior management in my company, you could go into 20 pages. You have to assume nobody wants 20 pages on that. So we decided to go with less and then let them ask for more, which is what we did. I agree that it's probably a year-long process. It probably took us maybe even a little bit more than that, because I did not go to my board first and insist that this was a bigger deal than they thought it was. I was probably the only one on the board at the time that thought, you'll comply with it, but you need to comply with it with the appropriate, you need to have the right attitude about it. You need to actually, this is the attempt of your department. My interpretation of this is the attempt of your department to gain more transparency into not only your corporate governance, but like Joel said, the financials and this thing are probably the two biggest deals to them. Or at least that's the impression I got. They're going to want to know as much as you're willing to tell them. And again, like was already said, there's a lot of stuff in there that maybe right now when you're preparing a report, you don't want to, as of today, you're thinking, I don't want to tell them I don't do that, or that we do it this way. Well, you've got some time to fix it. So start now so that when you write the report, you don't have to tell them either we don't do that, or we do that poorly, or whatever. And I think my impression was that there seems to be a lot of understanding, at least with smaller companies that are, $500 million is not a particularly small company, but I think there will be companies subject to this that perhaps haven't thought about this as fully as you would hope that they have. There seems to be some understanding that this is a work in progress, but if you start now, this is your chance to beef up before anybody catches on. I could talk for another, 45 minutes, but it would be boring, so.
Question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, your role in the company is exactly what?
I am the vice president, controller, and treasurer of the insurance company.
And you were delegated the responsibility for making sure your CGAD was filed with the Indiana department?
Yeah, so our corporate structure is such that we don't operate. We don't have, for example, we don't have a CFO. The company doesn't have a CFO. I would be CFO. We cede off all of our premium, and the majority of the premium we do write is federally guaranteed reinsurance. Most of our profit, all of our profit actually, comes from service revenue, or ends up as service revenue. It's reinsurance commission and then service revenue. But we do enough of it that we were subject to these requirements. Organizationally, historically, regulation and compliance in my entity wasn't thought about too heavily. My boss, for example, my boss is the CFO of the parent entity. when I got there, they would say things like, well, it's not a real insurance company, is it? Because we don't retain any risk. Or, you're not really an insurance company. So, which would be great if it was true, because then I would not have to do very much work. But when I pointed out that, we still have to file quarterlies, we do have to behave exactly like, I don't have to do this anymore, I finally got the point across. We are far closer to State Farm or Prudential or a household name than we are to an insurance company you've never heard of. I mean, the requirements that we're subject to, especially with respect to this, are infinitely closer to a large than a small company. And I spent a long time going to my boss saying, I know you don't think so, but call the Indiana department if you want to take it. I mean, at some point you have to say, we're subject to this. I won't be, they're not going to let us off the hook. I can call them. Like I said, he said, well, just tell them you don't want to do it. Okay. And then when they say you have to do it anyway, then explain to them why you don't have to do it. And I wasn't going to say either of those things to them. So this is why I think this is ultimately a good idea. I think, certainly in my entity, and I think I spent 10 years before this doing, the first 10 years of my career were insurance, P&C audit. It was my experience that with smaller companies, they're very much like my company, which I expect is a lot of these guys. There's a significant gap between, there's almost like a small company, and just like every other financial, there's a small company environment and a large company environment. This stuff is large company. This stuff is written in line with, I'm sure they tell you they want the small companies too, but they're concerned with, like the first page of the first Joel's presentation was AIG. That's who they're thinking about. And they're worried about a large company failure. So they write the requirements with that in mind. If you're a small company, a lot of my clients that were sub 250 million, or even some of the bigger, larger than that, they're not doing any of this. If it's closely enough held, they've never even thought about it. And that's where my company was when I got there. So I walked in and said, here's the several pages of stuff we're gonna have to start doing now. And I got instant, this was day 3, I got instant, no, we're not gonna do this, and we don't need to do it. And that's why you guys should start now. If you're in the environment where you're not doing this, or you're not doing it well, but you're gonna have to file this thing anyway, it's a bit like when I argue with my kid. I'm gonna win. It doesn't matter. I've already won. You're still talking, but I've already won the argument. That's a bit like how the CGAD will go for, you can spend time thinking about how, you'll still file it, but you can spend time thinking about, maybe we'll do this part not as well. We'll this part won't devote as much time to, this part won't. And you'll go through these and figure out, which of these they really don't apply to us, or which of these can we kind of try to slide by on. Don't do that. Just accept that to the extent that these do apply to you, do all of them, and devote the time to either documenting or implementing the things that you need to document and implement, and do it now. And that's to your original question, which is what am I doing in the company? I think there's probably somebody like me, and I think a lot of these guys are probably similar to that, is if you're just looking at this right now and you've never been subject to it, go ahead, get on with it. Other questions?
Scott, talk about the time frame from beginning to end in terms of the process.
It took us just over a year, I think, from we're going to have to do it to it's done. And again, I think a lot of that is, coming from a more traditional small company environment, a lot of it was wasted time trying to figure out how we could not just how we could not accept it and just get it done. I mean, if you accept from day one that you're gonna have to implement the whole thing, that's a different mindset. We spent far too long thinking, well, we'll just tell them that we don't have compensation, or we'll just tell them that we don't do board evaluations, or we'll just tell them that board nominations are exactly how you describe them, which is, hey, we need another board member, this guy's got some insurance experience, he's gonna take over the other guy. I mean, we had the processes and procedures usually, and in places where we didn't feel that we needed them. But you don't want to write that down in the CGAD. So start now and get these things in place. If we've done that, I think, if I had to do it all over again, I think we could have probably gotten it done in 8 months, 6 to 8 months, but fresh the first time, just over a year maybe. Yeah, just over a year.
Seems like the bookends over here are asking questions. What kind of feedback did you receive back from the Indiana department after you had submitted your corporate governance annual disclosure?
They sent us back that template. It was basically, I can show you what we sent and the template they sent back. The template they sent back was very similar. We sent them something that was outlined on this basis, and it was descriptive as it was descriptive enough. It wasn't, we didn't omit anything, we just didn't give them 3 pages on each topic. They sent back a template that was pretty much the same, almost the same thing. It was these same sections, but the template said, it had slightly more detail. And I think we expanded from 3 pages to, I think, 5. So it wasn't that much worse. It was just, again, the impression I got was that this is their first time through this too, and they're literally doing the same thing we are on the other end. They're sort of feeling their way through this, trying to figure out, what do we require from them? What are we really going to require from them? It would just have been easier the first time through to just not spend the first period of time trying to, how are we going to not do this as well as we can?
So what I'm hearing is there were two things you had to deal with. One with your department. One was the format of the report. They must have, you knew what you had to cover, but you sort of had a free-form way of submitting that. And then the department came back and said, well, we want to put some parameters over it so we know how to read them all the same way and we can judge it. But substantively, did they provide any feedback on what you had submitted to them?
There was very little substantive feedback. There was some. There wasn't none, but there was less substantive feedback, and more honestly, it was more of a appearance. I mean, like to the point that we literally, this is how we would call and say, give us anything at all. How do you want me to just start typing? Do you want it in like an outline? Help me out here. And their stock response was, it's freeform, do whatever you want. I mean, it became a joke around the office because they would respond verbatim the same way. It's completely freeform, do whatever you want. Literally anything you want to do it. And that wasn't a great response for my company specifically, because what we wanted to do was nothing. So anyway, I finally did it in outline, more or less outline format, each section like this, and then below describing what we thought was pertinent for each section. What they responded with was a template. They said, great, this is fine, we'll accept this, but hey, how about you do it this way from now on? It was also in a template format, or it was also in an outline format. It's got the sections, and then below it just asked a few more detailed questions like bonuses. The bonuses was a big thing for them, for compensation. To describe for, and when you read their feedback, you can tell exactly what they're wanting to know. The bonus thing for them was we have both salary and incentive comp for senior management. What they were asking was effectively, how much do you weigh? And that's what we said. We have a flat salary and incentive compensation. And the first time through, we told them incentive comp is not based on any specific metrics for the company. For example, nobody in my group is compensated on an X increase on written premium or an X increase on profitability or anything else. It's purely the board sits down and says, we think you did a good job and we were profitable, so there's X. We described that in the first go through. The template they responded with was basically a clarification of that. And they did something like that with probably 4 or 5 different points, which is, okay, we read your thing, tell us more about it, and put it in. I think the template, honestly, if I'm the department, or if I'm any of these departments, and you're looking at receiving, I don't know, 50 or 100 of these things, I want it in a template too. So I'm not even sure that template was necessarily in response to us as it was, I had a call with somebody at the department at one point after we'd submitted our CGAD, and we were talking about something else entirely, and he said, well, we have to go to training. Or, you can't call me next week because we'll be at training. Oh, have a good time, whatever. And he said, it's not going to be any fun. I went, oh, okay, fine. And he went, yeah, we have to get training on the CGAD. The thing I sent to you 3 months ago? He went, yeah. Okay. So I think that template was far more about them realizing that they're going to be reading a bunch of these things, and they'd like to keep them. I wouldn't want to receive 50 free-form, completely different documents to try to analyze. That would make the analysis terrible. So I think the template was far more about simplifying their analytics than it was anything else.
Scott? So I'm a little confused.
That tends to happen.
What took a year? I mean, it sounds like you have a template now that you've given.
We do now.
And so that probably takes an hour to complete the template.
You've been talking to my boss.
But what did you have to change in the organization? What did you have to
The
do?
template, reformatting our response to look like a template took us 90 minutes. Because we either, I have a sneaking suspicion we might have been Indiana's first responder, and I think they might have taken our report and based the template off of it. What took the year before that was, like I was saying, suitability standards for senior management. There's a fun conversation. Hey, boss, how are you suitable to do that job? I mean, that's it. You almost need to. If I ever leave this job and decide to stay in insurance accounting, which is not, if I had to do this all over again and I was coming in, and I mean, despite my lack of public speaking ability, I'm pretty good at this. If I had to do this again and I was given the same position in the company, which is senior enough to affect the change you need to affect, I would probably honestly assign this to a board committee. Just because you've got to get them up front at the highest level. This is a big deal, pay attention to it, let's do it right. What took more time than anything in this process was getting everybody's minds right, collectively getting the board and senior management to understand that not only we're going to do this, it's not going to go away. Nobody ever thought it would go away, but we thought we might just slide something by. And what you should do first is try to draft a report as you are right now, and you'll have just there's 10 of these things. 7 of them you're like, oh, there's no way I'm writing that down in the report. Like, I'm not going to tell them either we don't do that or we do this so lackadaisically that I'm just, no. But you've got a year to fix it. That's what took literally the iterative process of going through and saying, look, either we do this and we don't document it and we have to document it better, or we're not doing this well enough at all. And unless you're literally the CEO, you're going to have to go upstream, and that's a bit tricky. And that's what took. So your question, what took so long, is that you have several. My graduate degree. You have several different spheres of influence that are all competing for the resources or the influence or the whatever in the entity. You have to go to them, and that's a list of sensitive conversations, or at least potential sensitive conversations. It is until you get the most senior level of the organization on board, it will take longer. And what took us the longest was obtaining the understanding at the most senior levels that we were going to do this. After that, it's just documentation. That does take forever. Or process creation and implementation, which takes a long time. But that's what step one, get the buy-in you need, or brush up the rest. Step two, process documentation and implementation. And it will help. You should definitely consider, if you don't have that resource internally, get the outside resources, because you don't want to miss it.
So, as you've heard, Pennsylvania is in the beginning stages of developing their statute for corporate governance. What I've heard you say is that, one, when you came up with your own format, you actually had some internal debate within your leadership structure about whether these should be in there or not, creating the suitability for your job kind of standard. Do you think it would have been more helpful on the front end if the department would lay out a template?
Oh, gosh, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
because, we do have some folks from the legislature here
What?
that we may be talking to.
Do we have any PA DOI people here? Oh, they're not going to,
So the lesson learned is, as you were going through the legislative process, what would you have done differently now that you have the benefit of hindsight?
I wouldn't ever assume that a regulator's intent is to make this any easier on us. That's not been my experience in any capacity. But if they wanted to make this, if they wanted to get quicker, better answers, a template. And more detailed even, the template, I think you guys have the template they sent us. The template they sent us, if they really wanted quicker, better answers, a more detailed template than this would get you quicker, better answers. We spent a lot of time on how should we write this up, and periodically we would call and say, give us some guidance, and we got none. And not because, I actually like very much our regulators. I think they're doing the best they can, they're great people. It's just, this is new to them too. So yeah, the legislators right here, they're not saying anything, or the regulators. A template, tell specifically what you want, what you want to know about specifically, and detail it out. Because just saying it's free form, do whatever you want, you'll kill a lot of time on that. I mean,